Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We are in Leviticus 25, beginning in verse 8. If you'll recall, last time we kind of started into this little section of the year of Jubilee, but we didn't get really far enough to really step in. So we're going to start there at verse 8. So the year of Jubilee involves, or at least the counting of the year of Jubilee involves the discussion of the Sabbath year that we talked about last time. Okay, so you will count 7 sets of the Sabbath year. So that's 49 years. And when you finish that 7th Sabbath year, then you will have another. So by the way, let's make sure we understand that there is an interesting element here. You go in and you say on that 7th set, you have a Sabbath year, then the year of Jubilee, then the. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it says, then you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. That is the Day of Atonement. On the Day of Atonement, you shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land, and you shall consecrate the 50th year, proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to his property, and each of you shall return to his clan. Okay, so understand that a primary element of the year of Jubilee is the discussion of return. Okay, that's an important thing to make sure we understand, that the discussion of the year of Jubilee is about return. So, but it also says, okay, the 50th year shall be a Jubilee. You will neither sow nor reap. Okay, neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor gather the grapes from the undressed vine, for it is a Jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You may eat the produce of the field. Okay, so same thing as the discussion of the Sabbath year.
Yeah.
Okay, you cannot harvest, but you can go get food.
You could be free range people.
Okay. In this year of Jubilee, each of you shall return to his property. Okay. And if you make a sale to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. You shall pay your neighbor according to the number of years after the Jubilee, and he shall sell to you according to the number of years for crops. Okay. So the idea is, and understand, and this is interesting how it phrases it. You shall pay your neighbor according to the number of years after the Jubilee. So what it means is, if you've just finished the Jubilee year and it's the first year after the Jubilee, and you decide to sell your property, you will get more.
Yeah, that's what they mean.
Because what you're actually doing, and it's really an interesting discussion, you are selling the number of crops that the land can produce.
So they don't count the year that it lies fallow?
Well, no.
The price?
I mean,
Just
I guess they would count all that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But the idea is, so if you've just finished the year of Jubilee and it's year 1, getting ready for the next 50, then you are selling 42 harvests. Okay. And so that's the price you get. If you sell it in year 49 or year 48,
yeah.
okay, then you're only selling it for 1 harvest. So the price is going to be dictated by how many harvests they can get out of it.
That makes sense now.
Because, okay, you can't sell the land permanently.
Because it was given to you by God.
Right. Okay. So If the years are many, you shall increase the price. If the years are few, you will reduce the price, for it is the number of crops that he is selling to you. You shall not wrong one another. You shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. Okay. Therefore, you shall do my statutes, keep my rules, and perform them. And then you will dwell in the land securely. The land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill, and you will dwell in it securely. And if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year, if we may not sow or gather in our crop? I will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, so that it will produce a crop sufficient for 3 years. Okay. When you sow in the 8th year, you will be eating some of the old crop, and you shall eat the old until the 9th year when its crop arrives. Okay. Now notice, okay, so this is an important element to this. The religious calendar of the people of Judea, of the people of Israel, begins in March or April. The agricultural year begins on the 10th day of on the 1st day of September, or begins sometime in September. Okay. So the 7th month, the 10th day of the 7th month, really starts the agricultural year, the Day of Atonement. Well, no, it's not when they start harvesting, but that's when all of these things apply. So in other words, the Sabbath year of the crops begins in September and goes from September to September.
Okay, why does it begin in September? Because they're harvesting, right?
No, the harvest is over the summer.
Oh, okay.
The September, the Day of Atonement, actually, the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement are the end of the harvest year.
Oh,
Like
okay.
here, harvest actually begins September, October when you harvest your grain, your corn.
Right.
Mhm.
But their year is a little earlier. Their grain year it's more like winter wheat. So
Wheat you harvest normally around June.
right. And that's kind of the way that works. The wheat and the barley, they did more winter crops. They didn't do a crop rotation that started in the spring. They did winter crop. Because we know that Passover, which is in March or April, is the beginning of really Pentecost. So about a month and a half after Passover begins their harvest year. And so they harvest for 3 or 4 months, and the Feast of Trumpets is the end of their harvest. So they've harvested and probably not planted yet, but they've harvested. Okay, so the fallow years go from September to September, just like the Jubilee year goes from September to September. Okay.
And the fallow year is 50, right?
The fallow year is every 7,
Yeah.
and then there's an extra one at year 50.
Yeah. And you get to go back to your property.
Right. Okay. So verse 23 continues this discussion. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity. Okay.
Mine says permanent basis.
Cannot be sold permanently. That's what perpetuity means, it forever. Okay. Now watch. So here is the actual reason why. Because you don't own it.
No, God does.
Okay.
It returns back to the original owner.
Well,
So that's
but-
the reason why.
Yeah, but the premise is the land shall not be sold in perpetuity because it's not yours, it's mine. I gave you this plot of land to work. You can't sell it. You can lease it out for 50 years or 49 years, but you can't sell it.
When does that change?
Which I think is better.
What?
Then you can at least say you don't lose it because you always have a place to go back to.
Right.
Like Michelle says, when did they change
Yeah,
that?
when did they stop?
Well, we know that they stopped obeying a lot of these.
Put it on the table.
So they stopped obeying many of the laws sometime during it would appear to be, what did we figure out? 70 times 7. Hold on.
490.
So sometime around the reign of Solomon.
Okay.
Okay. So,
When they began being taken into captivity.
no,
No.
okay. So this is why I say that. Okay. Sometime in the reign of Solomon, because what the Bible says later is that the reason that the Babylonian captivity was 70 years is because there were 70 Sabbath years that they had not allowed the land to go fallow. And so God booted them and really made the land completely unproductive for the space of 70 years.
That will replenish it for sure.
Mhm.
And he warned them, it will vomit you out.
So while I can't tell you exactly all of that,
Mhm.
but we know that that is a reality in all of
Okay,
this.
yeah, I'd forgotten about.
Let me
that.
find, hold on, I'm looking on my phone so I don't have to
You
show
okay?
my search.
Oh, okay.
So there are several places where this comes up.
Where
Uh,
Jubilee?
Okay, 1 Kings chapter 21. Well, specifically,
Okay, we're going First Kings
21.
This is really the reason why I have in that Bible like this.
I know. Okay,
My phone will look better. I'll use that.
So, 1 Kings 21 is within the time of the divided kingdom. This is the northern kingdom. Okay, this is the northern kingdom of Israel, and they are under who was, without really any argument, the most pagan of all of the northern kingdom kings.
The bad one.
He is awful. Okay, so we come to chapter 21. It says, now Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard in Jezreel, beside the palace of Ahab, the king of Samaria. Okay. After this, Ahab said to Naboth, give me your vineyard that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is near my house. And I will give you a better vineyard for it if it seems good to you. Or if it seems good to you, I will give you its value in money. Okay, so now watch what has just happened. Ahab has said to Naboth, this vineyard is right next to my palace, and I would really like to put a garden there. So sell me permanently that vineyard. Okay, and in fact, if you'd like, I can give you another vineyard in its place, or I can give you money. So either I'll trade you vineyards, or I'll buy your vineyard. Now, but Naboth says to Ahab, the Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers. So now we don't know exactly to what level this is true, but Naboth is giving a righteous answer to this. No, I cannot sell you this land. Now, it does not say for sure whether Naboth is just saying, no, this has been in my family for 10 generations and I don't want to get rid of it, or if he is remembering that God has forbidden them to sell it. Okay. So the problem is, it does not matter. Okay. So it says, and Ahab went into his house vexed and sullen because of what Nahab the Jezreelite had said to him, for he had said, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. And he lay down on his bed and turned away his face and would eat no food. So Ahab has a reaction.
Tantrum.
to being told no, that is ridiculous.
He was sulking. I'm so guilty of that, y'all. I don't even.
Okay.
Even as an adult. Oh.
How dare he tell me no? Okay. Now, but Jezebel, his wife, came to him and said to him, why is your spirit so vexed that you eat no food? And he said to her, because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite and said to him, do you now govern Israel? Or no, sorry. Give me your vineyard for money, or else if it pleases you, I'll give you another vineyard. And he answered, I will not give you my vineyard. Then Jezebel, his wife, said to him, do you now govern Israel? Arise and eat bread and let your heart be cheerful. I will get you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite.
It's always the Jezebel.
Okay. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal. And she sent the letters to the elders and the leaders who lived with Naboth in his city. And she wrote in the letters, proclaim a fast and set Naboth at the head of the people. And then she set two worthless men opposite him and let them bring a charge against him, saying, you have cursed God and the king. Okay. Take him out and stone him to death. So now understand what has just happened. I won't go through the whole story, but understand that what Jezebel does is she falsely accuses him of a crime that leads to his execution. She murders Naboth to get his vineyard. Okay. Now, later we will find that the Lord doesn't take kindly to this.
I bet not.
Okay. So the Lord comes to Elijah. Now, remember, this is still Elijah. And it says, this is verse 17 of chapter 21. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, arise and go and meet Ahab, king of Israel, who's in Samaria. Behold, he's in the vineyard of Naboth, where he has gone to take possession. Now, make sure you understand, God still considers it Naboth's vineyard. Okay.
Yeah, and the issue is he had nobody to inherit it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's why he was going to go like
So-
him on this land. Okay.
And you shall say to him, thus says the Lord, have you killed and also taken possession? And you shall say to him, thus says the Lord, in the place where dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick your own blood.
Let loose the dog.
Ahab said to Elijah, have you found me, O my enemy? So God is his enemy. Okay, I have found you because you have sold yourself to do what is evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring disaster upon you. I will utterly burn you up. I will cut off from Ahab every male bond or free in Israel. And I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah, for the anger which you have provoked me, and because you've made Israel to sin. And of Jezebel, the Lord also said, the dog shall eat Jezebel within the walls of Jezreel. Anyone belonging to Ahab who dies in the city, the dogs shall eat. Anyone who dies in the open country, the birds of the heavens shall eat. So no one will bury any of his descendants, is what that means.
They will all be food for somebody else.
Now, the reason I share that, okay, we'll go back to Leviticus now. The reason I share that is to say this. Please understand that this was not just a tiny little,
Or whatever.
okay. So to break this was to dishonor God.
And become the enemy of God.
Okay. Now, it does not, now notice, Naboth doesn't actually sell it to him, which we must make sure we understand. But it is clear that God was serious about this. It belongs to the person I gave it to and to his descendants forever. Okay. So verse 24. Okay. In all the country you possess, you shall allow a redemption of the land. Okay. If your brother becomes poor and sells part of his property, then his nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what his brother has sold.
Guess what?
Call your local.
Well,
That is the entire
Ray-
discussion of the book of Ruth.
yeah, Boaz is the kinsman redeemer.
I see.
Okay, so
I'm sorry.
This is
I-
exactly where,
I was just making.
no, I know, but this is exactly where Ruth gets grafted into the lineage of Christ,
okay,
is through the kinsman redeemer.
so then it goes on. Okay, his nearest relative can come and redeem it. It says shall, but it's
Mhm.
can.
Yeah,
If the man has no one to redeem it and then himself becomes prosperous and finds sufficient means to redeem it, then let him calculate the year since he sold it and pay back the balance to the man to whom he sold it and then return to his property. So let's say the first year after Jubilee, he sells it. So he sells it for the cost of 49 or 42 years of crops. Then 8 years later, he becomes wealthy and can buy his property back. Then he pays back the amount of,
It's like a loan at the bank and you could pay it.
almost,
right, yeah.
okay.
That thing.
But so if 8 years
make
later,
it-
he realizes he can buy it back, then what he has to pay is the balance of what he was given. Minus the
Minus-
years that the guy got to use it.
That's cool.
Okay. But if he doesn't have sufficient means to recover it, then what he sold shall remain in the hand of the buyer until the year of Jubilee. In the Jubilee, it shall be released and he shall return to his property. Okay. If a man sells a dwelling house, okay,
Such provision.
I know, that's so cool.
now this is now understand this is agricultural property.
I know,
Okay.
but they were raised doing this.
Yes.
This is like what they do.
But there is another rule in the city. Okay, if a man sells a dwelling house in a walled city,
Okay,
okay, so it's a city with walls, he has a house that he's living in there. So it's not a place he's doing farming, it's not a place he's doing business, it's not a
just
place,
his house.
just his house. He may redeem it within a year of its sale. So if he sells his house in a city, then for 1 year, he has the right to come back and say, I want it back.
And has the money.
Okay, for a full year, he shall have the right of redemption. If it is not redeemed within a full year, then the house in the walled city shall belong in perpetuity to the buyer throughout his generations, and it shall not be released in the Jubilee.
Oh, so like if you have a house in town and you sell it and you don't buy it back within a year,
Then you
then
lose
you
it.
lose it altogether, like
Now-
selling a house.
Right.
Yeah.
So is everybody's 50 years the same? Or
Yes.
Can you have a different 50?
No, it's everybody's 50 is the same.
Right.
Now, I have tried to look because I wondered if the 7 staggered. It does not appear that that's the case. It appears that it's every 7 years, every person in the land of Israel has their land go fallow for a year. The Jubilee is certainly the same for everyone.
So we kind of cheated that a little bit. We had 7 plots that we planted on.
Yeah,
So every year, one of those would lie fallow.
And
And we would fix it. So like if we did cotton 1 year, then guaranteed peanuts are gonna be in that one the next year. Cause it replenishes the, yeah. And so that's what our family did, but my granddad swore by it and I never
remember
knew
that
at time that
we
it
are
wasn't
not
plentiful.
under the same Sabbath
Yeah.
laws.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm. Well, that
However,
was just his thing. That was like, he just chose
However,
to.
it's
good-
wise,
it's
it's
good.
wise.
practice for your land.
Every now and then you gotta let the
My
land,
hat's off to
you gotta let it
anybody that
rest.
can grow anything. 'Cause
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
can't.
So,
And so, worry about a plant later.
Okay.
okay. So now this is not the end of this. Okay. So
Not the end of the house in the city.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. The houses of the villages that have no wall around them shall be classified with the fields of the land. Okay,
So like
So-
if you live in a tent.
what?
If you
No,
live in a tent,
if you live in a small village that doesn't have a wall.
Oh, they're talking like literal wall.
So
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
of it,
Oh, yeah.
think of it this way.
Yeah, that
Okay,
makes sense.
so
This
he
is
is
my
making a
actual
distinction with what we would
Village.
call urban versus rural.
Cause we live in rural.
Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
Okay,
Clovis, while if we were to be completely honest, Clovis would qualify as a city with a wall. Okay, population is part of that discussion.
Okay.
San Juan would not qualify as a city with a wall.
Thank
We're
God.
not even a city.
Okay,
Right.
and so also think about it this way. Okay, if you lived in a city with a wall, you were probably not in a city that was near to your pasture land. If you were agrarian, if you had pasture land. If you lived in a city like this, so think about the people that live here in town or very close to town who also have a plot of land just outside of town.
Yeah.
And what it's saying is that doesn't, they're
They're-
they're
They're
connected.
one and the same.
Okay,
They're all inclusive.
okay. So they may be redeemed and they shall be released in the Jubilee. Now, verse 32, as for the cities of, okay, as for the cities of the Levites. Okay.
Levites are the priests.
So
right?
remember,
They have separate cities?
yes, it is their particular inheritance from the Lord.
Was their own city?
Yes, remember,
Well,
okay, so let's make sure we understand.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
So why this is important is this. So there's not a tribe of Levi that's given land. There's not so when we talk about the tribes of Israel and the land,
Benjamin,
you have Judah, Benjamin, Issachar, all of those. Levi is not given his own piece of territory. And so the Levites are given a number of cities that are within the tribes because they are the priests of Israel.
Of Israel. And I was gonna say, they got it better, I think, cause
Right.
they're like the head honchos for God. They're like, they
Sure,
talk.
but-
But
like I
also they didn't
said-
get any land because they got in because Levi got in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't know that.
Okay,
But there's the higher responsibility
Yeah.
too that came with it.
so
That some of them took very seriously, some did not so much.
but understand that the
trouble with God.
reason this is being brought up is that since those cities are the Levites' only inheritance,
It's all they get.
then they have the right to redeem their homes in the Levitical cities because they don't have pasture land.
Got you. So like if they were to go into contract with somebody for the 49 years.
Right.
Later to whatever,
They
then
can
they would
retain.
be able to get it back
Mhm.
even though they're in the city because that's all they have.
Right.
City.
And so
Got
part
you.
of this discussion also comes down to location. Okay.
Sounds like real estate, location.
I know.
location.
So you have a large city with a wall.
Yeah.
Okay. It is unlikely that the person who's living in a house within a walled city is on the land that God gave them in the tribe.
I'm sure.
Okay, so they don't have the right to redeem it. In an unwalled city, so talk about like Bethlehem.
Okay.
Okay, Bethlehem is a small village in the tribe of Judah. And remember that we have this small village and David comes from that small village. He did agricultural work in the area of the village. So it's very possible that the plot of land on which this house is in the village is still the land that God had given them as an ancestral home.
Okay.
And so they should have the right to redeem it.
Got you.
For the Levites, they don't have agricultural land. They only have the city that they were given. And so it says they have the right to redeem it.
That's only fair.
Uh-huh. Okay. So it goes on, it says, so as for the cities of the Levites may redeem at at any time the houses in the cities they possess. And if one of the Levites exercises his right of redemption, then the house that was sold in a city they possess shall be released in the Jubilee. For the houses and the cities of the Levites are their possession among the people of Israel. But the fields of pasture land belonging to their cities may not be sold, for that is their possession forever. So the Levites do have a small amount of pasture land outside of their cities. They can't sell it ever.
Ever. They can't like pawn it for like,
Nope.
no. No pawn in this.
Right,
house.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You can pawn your house. but
Now,
that's-
it may
that's
mean- It may mean more than anything is the fact that you can sell your house in the city if you want to move to another city.
Gotcha.
And you could sell it permanently if you want to, but it says if they claim the right of redemption. So what it means is during the sale, this is my opinion, and it's not completely clear. So you live in this Levitical city and you decide to sell your house. You can make a choice of whether to sell it temporarily, just till the year of Jubilee, or permanently. Okay, so let's say you decide to move into a different house. And you buy a house, and the guy that you buy it from says, yeah, I don't want it back. You can have it forever. Okay. So then you take your house and go, well, I already have a house now, so I'm not going to exercise my right of redemption on this. Yeah. Okay. But any fields around the city, if that's your piece of land for your small farm, you can't sell that. It falls under the rules. Okay. I'm sorry. I had said they just can't sell it at all, but it really is, they can't sell it permanently.
At least God made
Right.
provision for them to be able to pawn something too.
Okay. So now we go on. So verse 35, if your brother becomes poor and cannot maintain himself with you, you shall support him as though he were a stranger and a sojourner, and he shall live with you. Okay. Take no interest from him or profit, but fear your God that your brother may live beside you. You shall not lend your money at interest, nor give him your food for profit. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. Okay, so what it's saying is, let's say your brother becomes poor, not quite to the point that he has to sell everything, but
And by brother, it means,
fellow Israelite.
okay.
But
So not
they're
just
to do,
family.
no, it's talking about fellow Israelite, and really notice you shall support him as though he were a stranger and a foreigner. So by the way, it doesn't say that you just give him everything. But what it does say is you treat him the same way you are been called to treat someone who is visiting your land. And notice, you will not loan him money with interest.
So it doesn't say you won't loan him money. It says you won't tack on more.
Now, let's make sure we understand. There's a good chance that if you loan him money, you won't get it back.
Yeah,
Because remember that there is also a discussion within Jubilee, and I think later it comes up even in this discussion of the Sabbath rest, that debts are forgiven. So if you owe money at that certain time, then your debt gets forgiven. I don't know. It's probably, I bet they're mowing over next door. It's the,
does sound like it's right up there. I don't know. That's
I've
cool.
gone into Dennis, I mean, Lord.
yeah, or Wayman and them have started doing their mowing thing again. Anyway, but anyway, what it's saying is you will not sell them food for profit. You will not lend them money at interest. Why? Because you were slaves in Egypt and I took care of you, so now you can take care of each other. Okay. Now, verse 39, if your brother becomes so poor beside you and he sells himself to you. Okay. So now watch.
Bondservant.
Yeah.
So this is saying that your neighbor has had such a bad period that not only has he had to sell his property, but he's having to sell himself. Then you don't treat him like a slave, you treat him like a hired worker. And he will serve you until, guess what?
Year of Jubilee.
And at the year of Jubilee, he goes out. He and his
Back to your
children,
house, buddy.
Yeah. he and his children with him, and go back to his own clan and return to the possessions of his father. Okay. So, then it goes on. Okay. For they are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as slaves. You shall not rule over him ruthlessly, but you will fear your God. Now, as for your male and female slaves whom you may have, you may buy male and female slaves from among the nations that are around you. You may also buy from among the strangers who sojourn with you and their clans that are with you, who have been born in your land. They may be your property. You may bequeath them to your sons after you to inherit as a possession forever. You may make slaves of them, but over your brothers, the people of Israel, you shall not rule one over another ruthlessly. So now understand that this is one of those things that you sit there and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe he condoned slavery.
No, it is logical in my brain and part of my brain that says like, there's no way of making money or eating. So you sell yourself into slavery. It's logical on a basic
Right.
needs sense.
Now, but notice that some of the other is also saying though that, let's say you go into Egypt and you go to a slave auction, you can buy a slave and keep them in your home forever.
And then pass them on to your
But
kids.
here's the thing, and it is a very important element to this. God was very clear that you shall not mistreat your slaves.
Yeah.
And then made even more clear in the New Testament.
Now, so let's make sure we understand. Yes, there is a level at which, and I will be the first to admit that later we find that while God allows this, it is not that he wants people owning people. But there is a level of discussion here that if you treat a slave well, they have a pretty good life. That's not popular in our culture, but we're
Well,
talking about an agrarian.
Yeah, it's possible.
Right. So let's deal with it let's talk about it under this term. Okay. Which is more humane? Okay. And I may get myself in trouble, but which is more humane? Okay. Making someone be homeless or be well treated in a home and being made to work.
Making a person homeless, I think is more wrong.
It's more wrong or
It is more wrong.
Yeah, it's more wrong.
Okay. So we look at, okay.
But and that's the difference too. It's not choosing to be that way. It is making them, these are your two options. Either you're completely homeless and destitute, and like it's not
Or you
them
come live in
choosing
my
that.
house and you cook and you clean and do
Right.
laundry.
Right.
Sign me up. You feed me?
Right.
Only I can't cook, so. whatever.
It's all right. You can do the other stuff. They'll got somebody who can cook.
The ultimate evil of slavery is the treatment.
The abuse and the overworking.
Okay.
The cruelty.
And by the way, notice that under Jewish law, if at any point they found that you were being cruel to your slave was released.
Really? That's cool.
Mhm.
That is, if you beat your slave and he loses an eye, then he
Oh,
goes free.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading
If
that.
you beat your slave and his hand is destroyed, he goes free.
Yeah,
We are told, the Jews are told, you will not mistreat. And that's important to understand. Okay. So then it goes on. If a stranger or a sojourner with you becomes rich, and your brother beside him becomes poor and sells himself to the stranger or sojourner with you, or to a member of the stranger's clan, then after he is sold, he may be redeemed. One of his brothers may redeem him, or his uncle or his cousin may redeem him, or a close relative from his clan may redeem him. Or if he grows rich, he may redeem himself. Okay, he shall calculate with his buyer from the year when he sold himself until the year of Jubilee, and the price of his sale shall vary with the number of years. The time he was with his owner shall be rated as the time of a hired worker. If there's still many years left, he shall pay proportionally for his redemption some of his sale price. If there remains but a few years until the year of Jubilee, he shall calculate and pay for his redemption in proportion to his years of service. He shall treat him as a worker hired year by year. He shall not rule ruthlessly over him in your sight. And if he is not redeemed by these means, then he and his children with him shall be released in the year of Jubilee. For it is to me that the people of Israel are servants. They are my servants who I brought out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God.
I like how God puts periods on his sentences.
I am the Lord your God.
Yep.
And there's a big difference between this kind of a slavery and this type of slavery.
Right,
So now
Mhm.
this is,
Kidnapping
Right.
people, they're like willingly
right.
entering into this.
Mhm.
contract.
and by the way, let's
And then
make sure.
You're exactly right. That's a big difference.
Let's make sure we understand though, because it's interesting that it gets into this. He sold himself to one who was not Hebrew, but one who was living in the land,
A foreigner in the Hebrew.
a foreigner in the land. But the context here says that it is a foreigner who is worshiping the Lord God.
Then he's your
Then-
brother.
But this is the person who did the buying. It's not the one who sold himself. It's a Hebrew selling himself to somebody outside of the Jewish people, but who lived in the land.
Remember the brother thing? If a
Yeah,
brother, okay, so he's not like, that's already provided for the previous part. This is in regards to a Hebrew who sells himself to.
somebody that's not another Hebrew.
Mhm.
Then, as long as that person is living in the land and is a sojourner, he is a traveler in the land. He is not a pagan. Now that is a critical element of this, okay? Because a sojourner or a stranger in the land is not a pagan.
Not a baby.
They are one who has chosen to worship God, but are not ethnically Jewish.
Like Ruth.
Right.
Mhm,
Or like
mhm.
the Egyptians who came out of
Oh, yeah.
Egypt. Okay.
I forgot about that.
Then guess what? The same rule applies to them. They can't go, well, I'm not Jewish, so it doesn't apply to me.
Nope, it still applies.
Okay.
You exist. in this land.
They would call them converts now.
Yes.
Yeah,
Proselytes.
you're right.
All right. So we are going to stop right there. We will pick up on 26 next time. That puts us at the end of a chapter. And so we'll stop right there. Not to mention the fact that the next chapter is a little bit fun and we need to take a little extra time on it. One of the most, actually, chapter 26 is one of the most important chapters of the whole book.
Hey.
All right. For those of you who are watching online, I hope it was productive.